We've seen something pretty interesting happen.
Yeah.
The first Gearbox World Cup win.
100
Not.
high fives.
Yeah. Can they make this TV show as good as it needs to be?
Yeah, there's no story. It's just, you're not going to tune in to watch a victory run.
Exactly. So Canadian kids just taking over downhill. It's happened now too many times. And Jackson is a light kid. He's
tiny.
It was 36 pounds.
That was the lightest one. 36.
36. But that's the thing is there's no more protected riders.
I'm okay with it.
And I think this, if executed correctly, can be the future for enduro.
I kind of go back to the organizers, the people pushing the buttons of EWS back in the day, relying on the industry too much. But that's enduro, right? You guys like it hard.
Yeah, that's the way it is. All right, everyone, welcome back to the RECON MTB podcast.
You welcome back.
That's the thing. I was gone for a second.
Podcast.
I know. I was in Europe, Euroland, at some World Cups. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A whole bunch of World Cup stuff.
Nice. I'm excited for it. We're like well into the season now. We've kind of got an idea who's feeling what this season. Maybe some of the early season high hopes have not come through, and some of the other guys have been pushing it and they're making their way. So yeah, we'll chat about everything.
Exactly. There's been some surprises. There's been some good weather, some bad weather. Depends if you're looking at enduro or downhill, but lots to get into. Basically, there's been 4 enduro races, 3 downhill races so far. Many of them were at the same venues, meaning Ludenville and Leogang and Poland.
Do you like that?
Well, that's the thing. Depends how close they are. In Poland, they're in the same town, but they're not at the same venue.
Okay.
The downhill venue is like 45 minutes away from the
Oh, 45 minutes. That's not the same place.
Yeah, I feel bad, honestly. There was some team staff like driving between the two all day long. And I was like, dang, that must be
That's
hard.
rugged.
Yeah. But yeah, for Poland, the enduro felt like it was standalone, basically. And then you go to Ludenville, and you go to Leogang. It's a different dynamic. The races are on different days. The pit zones, like a town only has so much empty space for these pits. And as downhill,
none in Europe.
Yeah, pretty much none. Like when was the last time you saw a parking lot in a European village? Never.
Maybe a ski resort close to a big city.
Exactly. It's open fields. You know, they're limited for space, and these downhill setups are growing. Like you probably saw the Orbea pit.
Yeah.
It's huge now.
Yeah,
And
what's the FMD pit, right?
exactly. Yeah. And they're growing with more sponsorships and Specialized and YT. They all have these big semi-truck pits, similar to like MotoGP and all that. It's not quite Formula One level, you know, but
Actually, I think that the Specialized Gravity is an ex-Formula One truck of some sort. I don't know what it did. Maybe it housed the peasants that came to sweep the floor. I don't know, but it was F1 at some point, someone said.
yeah, very cool. I actually visited the YT Mob pit. It was very cool. They had it custom made for that year. You walked in, obviously there was the big, like you have a semi truck in the middle and then the tent comes out from there. So you walk in, there's 5 mechanics working on different bikes, Valley Hole's sitting in the corner. It's like, okay, this is cool. And then you walk into the van and there's a kitchen zone. There's someone, an employee there making food kind of endlessly for everyone.
So crazy. The volume of it. And then you like track that back to like people buying bikes on the internet. Like, really? That many people?
Yeah. And the funny thing is almost no one buys downhill bikes, but you know, that's like brand building for the entire industry. It's like Formula One. No one has a Formula One car, but it represents the brands and what they can do.
At least in mountain biking, you can spend the money to almost get what they have. Like you can get a lot closer, I think, to, you know, a World Cup mountain downhill bike to have in your garage than you could an F1 car. Well,
yeah, for sure.
I guess it's all money. They sell all those cars at the end of the year anyways.
They do, but mass market, people can buy downhill bikes. Yeah. Yeah. And then when you look at the other side of that, there's enduro, which is a much more nimble sport, which with currently much less funding. So you have these standalone tents and vans, and they're usually in a different part of the pit area if it's a shared event. And enduro almost feels like an afterthought because they have enduro in pretty prime locations, but the enduro pits always make sense to enduro. Like, for example,
you got to ride in, ride out, right?
Exactly.
They're service stations.
They're service stations, basically mobile service stations, because they're used during the race. It has to be along a liaison pretty much for the technical assistance zone. And then for example, in Ludenville, the finish of the last stage was right where the enduro pits were. So it made sense. And realistically, the downhill pits were closer to the downhill finish and the enduro pits were closer to the enduro finish.
So they had the space to make it make sense.
Yeah. Just not as many people were going over to enduro than you would have hoped, but it is what
Did
it
you
is.
notice any uptick in, you know, people on the shoots on the track fans, people cruising around the pits. Did you notice an uptick with it being that close?
Honestly, Ludenville was great. There were a lot of people there. They do a really good job making that a greater festival. So there's vendor booths, there's trail tools and surons and bike shops that are present with a bunch of stuff. And
I like how your brow furrowed when you said suron. You just couldn't help it.
No comment. Well, it's a huge festival and it's a small village. So there's people everywhere and they do make their way onto the trails. And we were blessed in Ludenville with really good weather.
That's cool. I feel like that's the key to having a good turnout as far as spectators go, is there has to be other riding there too. Like, I enjoy riding bikes. I like watching bikes, but I wouldn't go on a trip just to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's plenty of trails around. There's open bike parks. Now, the other side of that, Leo Gang, the downhill got lucky with weather. It was a little bit slick and slippery in practice, but mostly dry. But man,
yeah,
the
the weather for the downhill was like perfect.
It was perfect. And no one would have wanted it to be worse for that sort of track. Like, that would be gnarly. It happens at times, but
yeah, a couple of years ago, I can think about it. Those route sections, like the lower route sections in the woods, there's like no dirt now. They've been racing it enough. So it'd be interesting to see if they redo that bottom course. But how did the weather end up for Enduro?
It ended up pretty much once the point that the downhill finished, it started raining. And it rained all the way through about 11 a.m. And the riders were starting about 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And it stopped about 11 a.m. So everyone was wet, cold, and
tired
and a little bit probably uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do this sort of thing. There were a lot of riders with frowns, I'll say. But, the strongest sort of pushed through. And
yeah, I mean, that's tough too. That's a couple of mud races in a row.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what was that, 2016 season, where it was like perfect conditions for practice and then dumped rain every single race of the EWS season.
Unfortunately, that's the story of most seasons.
But that's Enduro, right? You guys like it hard.
Yeah, that's the way it is. But it doesn't seem like the weather's doing any favors.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm sure brands are making excuses. It's muddy. You're all wearing black. We can't see any branding. Like, it's so tough, like, for that to be something to think about when you're trying to like
just survive
at a high level. Right.
And rain jackets are actually required in order to go up in the alpine passes. The organization won't let you leave without a rain jacket.
Just for safety, people getting too cold.
Yeah. And you can get caught in these gnarly rainstorms and you just need it.
Oh yeah. I remember getting caught in a couple things. Lituile was gnarly.
They were all gnarly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, so World Cups, there's been a lot of changes in both enduro and downhill. I want to talk first about downhill. This new qualification structure, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, they changed to the quali semi-final format. And there was a whole group of people who were angry about that too.
Was there people that liked that one?
I think the general thing was people didn't like only 30 people in finals. Before it was 60 riders into finals from one qualification.
Before, I remember when it was 80.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but you do. And that was good, but they needed to make it like a format they could televise. Nowadays, it's actually on live TV in Europe. Like, they have longer breaks to fit in commercial breaks. So that's changed. And so people were getting whittled down to 30 and they're like, oh, I'm not in finals. That's a bummer. And then this year, it's actually different. It's more like Supercross. They have Q1 and Q2, which people like to call LCQ, last chance qualifiers.
Yeah, it's a little more exciting.
Yeah, it is. And then still 30-person finals. And for women, it's similar, but I believe it's only 15 people in finals and 20 in...
Yeah, just a shorter overall roster on both qualifications.
Exactly. But the thing is, nowadays, there's so many hyper-impressive riders that are big names that people would need to see in finals, and sponsors invest a lot of money into. They're not making it to finals.
I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the change. Like, the whole point of competition in my mind is who is the best on that day. Whether the conditions are whether they hit a rock and got a flat, it doesn't matter. It's who's the best on that day with all of those situations. And that's what kind of always rubbed me the wrong way with people being protected.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there's no more protected riders.
Yeah.
So that's the whole picture.
That's what I mean, is it's leveled the playing field out, but it's also given an additional opportunity, because there was no second chance if you made a mistake in qualifying in the past. Yeah, you can say that that's like part of the excitement of downhill, that there is no second chance, but it's giving more chances for the younger, newer, up-and-comer riders to get in, even though it's a smaller final overall number of riders to allow broadcast. I think, they're doing a pretty good job. If you put those two pieces together, that they're adding opportunities while cutting it down, that seems like the right way to go.
Yeah. And honestly, compared to last season, which still had only 30 people in finals, it seems like removing the protected riders does give the younger riders or the up and coming riders a better chance, because, if there's a handful of top elites that aren't in, of course, there's going to be a handful of others that are.
Yeah. I'm no mathematician, but in a percentage wise, if there's 10 of the 30 that are protected, that's like a 30% more chance opportunity, or 33.33333. That's what I'm seeing on the calculator. But yeah, so it's a lot more opportunities, and we're seeing it happen. We've seen some breakout rides by some unknown names already this year.
Definitely. But we've also seen some unfortunate, non-qualifiers by big team names.
The mental game is becoming more important.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that the fuse is shorter for some riders. So some riders that 2-3 rounds have that mess up in quali or Q2 don't get into finals. They're all of a sudden gone from maybe a good career rider to maybe not having a team for that next season. So it's really cutthroat, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. I mean, I understand where they're going and why they're doing it. And it's definitely some growing pains for some of those riders out there and teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And from qualification, there's been a little bit of a trend that has emerged. Canadian kids just taking over downhill. It's happened now too many times to deny it, that it could be happening. You have Jackson Goldstone, Gracie Hemstreet winning the last 2 rounds in pretty spectacular fashion too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good Canadian riders, even in the junior categories too. You keep seeing the little flag in the corner popping up more and more higher on the list.
Exactly. And I think the first round was a little bit more business as usual, but these next 2 were okay, this is something that we can't ignore now. Jackson, despite the odds, despite his lightweight, winning Leogang. For those who aren't super educated about it, Leogang's a very fast, somewhat flat track. And Jackson is a light kid. He's
tiny.
He's light, and weight helps you in gravity racing. Someone who's 180 to 200 pounds is going to go a lot faster through the motorway section than someone like Jackson.
Yeah.
And he has to fight that. It's against his odds, but somehow he's able to do it.
Well, he's doing it because he's a world-class athlete, and world-class athletes take every little thing that they have, whether it looks like a disadvantage to you or me, and they make it their advantage. And that's what makes him who he is.
Exactly. And that was with losing over a second in the motorway. He was able to bring that up at the top and the bottom. It just depends.
It just depends on perspective, right? What angle you're coming from. Yes, being heavier helps you in a gravity race, but until what point, on what track? Because he even commented his abilities in the steep sections. That's where he's able to make up a lot of time on people, because he can actually go faster in between the braking zones because he can slow down faster. He's so much smaller. It's like it's like a cheat code, and he's figured it out, and he's using what he has to his advantage. And when it comes to the motorway section, yeah, he lost time, but I would hardly call that type of riding a disadvantage. The dude grew up in Whistler.
Yeah.
He's been tiny. He started riding the bike park when he was probably 3 or 4. His entire life, he's been struggling and fighting for speed to clear the jump.
Every jump,
it's ingrained.
Probably. Yeah.
It's not even a technique. It's just riding bikes. Mm-hmm. That's how he rides.
Right. So he's always been recovering speed, gaining speed, boosting extra. They call him Boost Bro for a reason.
Yeah, having to get towed in on his little kick bike to be able to clear the double. He's always been fighting for speed since day one.
Yeah. And, we saw something interesting is he was actually adding weights to his bike. And I think that compensated a little bit, but you can only add so much to your bike before it becomes not helpful. So what point do you think that is?
That 40-pound range seems to be a pretty... a good ceiling, I think. It's different for different people depending on the way they ride. When it comes to e-bikes and stuff, that's where I really start to notice the handling change. A 40-pound enduro race bike or a 40-pound downhill race bike, that's a little on the heavy side for sure, but it's not out of the question.
They weighed enduro race bikes. Julie was actually a part of it too, and she had the lightest bike in the test.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what was it?
It was 36 pounds.
That was the lightest one?
The lightest
36?
One. 36. But there was a toolkit. There's the stash box.
Yeah, it's all the stuff.
Now. So toolkit is on, power meter. I can't remember what else.
Tube?
But, I think there's a small tube in the toolkit. So I think it was like a pound, the toolkit.
Okay, but still 35 pounds. Yeah, that's like your average, like not top of the line, but like maybe pro or expert level complete bike out the door. That's about what that weighs.
But these race bikes, they have the downhill tires, sometimes the inserts, everything's overbuilt a little bit.
Thicker gauge spokes, heavier nipple. Yeah, you can go crazy with it.
Yeah, and some of the top bikes in terms of weight were at that 40-pound mark. And that in enduro, I think, could be a little bit detrimental, but downhill is perfect.
It wasn't until the geometry started to come correct on e-bikes that I started to really feel the benefits of the heavier bikes. Mm-hmm. And then, those benefits, they were minimal in the beginning. And then the suspension companies started making stiffer suspension. The dampers were working better. Everything kind of like caught up to that weight. And then you really started to feel the benefits of the weight, the traction, the stability. And I mean, mass dampers, weights on your bottom bracket, it's all just trying to fine tune the bike. But ultimately, they're just trying to feel good in their brains. Mm. Like, if it feels like an advantage, if somebody tells them that there's a possibility that it's an advantage and they feel something and they make it an advantage in their head, it actually doesn't matter if it is or not. Mm-hmm. It's an advantage.
Yeah. The mental part of racing is almost the best.
I mean, that was Greg Menard, the GOAT. Like, that was his thing. Like, I can't remember who it was that told me, but it was very rare that he would come down from a run, whether it was practice, qualifying, whatever it was, that he wouldn't make some change to his bike. Maybe it was a lever adjustment, a reach adjustment, the throw on his derailleur, like anything. He would make a difference so he could convince himself in his mind he was bettering himself than his competition.
Yeah, he was doing something, moving forward in some way.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Very cool.
Hey, Nick, tell me why the only place to shop online is ReconMTB.com.
Great question. We've got a bunch of great mountain bike products for sale. You can buy from your favorite people and you could win a bike. This month, we're giving away a Forbidden Dreadnought, the KX 500 colorway. It looks so cool.
How could you not love that color?
Love it. And the bike is just sick. So go on to ReconMTB.com, buy the gear you already needed. I know you need a tire. I know you need a chain. You've been putting off that chain too long.
People definitely don't have enough chain lube.
Yeah, you can always get some chain lube. So ReconMTB.com, make it happen. Maybe win a bike. Let's go.
Yeah, I haven't been to an enduro race in, I don't even know. I'm not gonna bother counting the years, but it was an EWS the last time I went.
Right.
So that tells you how long ago it was. What's like the main differences that you could pinpoint going to a race nowadays?
Exactly. Like, I've been to every EWS and now EDR since 2018, I want to say. And I've seen the entire progression. There was a point in 2017, 2018, even 2019, where it kind of seemed like enduro would be the future, right? There were a bunch of downhill racers starting to do enduro. Sponsors were starting to realize it would be good. It's a mass market sport. Most people ride the bikes that they race. So there's a lot of comparison. And then COVID sort of changed things a bit. At the same time, Warner Brothers Discovery acquired enduro, basically.
Yeah.
And the push was, okay, like downhill, we're going to find the best way to televise this sport. And they tried for 3 to 5 years. But I think in the end, they realized that an enduro race is so long. Sometimes they're out there for 8 hours.
Sometimes they're 2 days.
Yeah. Sometimes they're 2 days too. And no one's going to tune in for an 8-hour program, And they were able to cut them down to about like an engaging hour, but it couldn't be live. So they had this interesting thing where they were trying to make it live and trying to make it engaging, but the sports format wasn't really allowing for that. And it sort of is what it is. Like, you can't change enduro to make it work. And they tried a few times with like a pro stage. They tried filming different stages. They tried formatting the highlight reel a little bit differently. But in the end, what's tried and true for the highlight reel is just going over stage by stage winners and such. And really, enthusiast riders will enjoy that, but people from outside the sport will find that a bit dull. Now, we're getting into 2025. They pretty much realized that there's no way for enduro to go live. No one's going to tune in for 8 hours. And also, if you're going to televise the last stage, the entire race is almost decided by then. Sometimes there's 30 seconds to a minute separating multiple places.
There's no story. It's just, you're not going to tune in to watch a victory run.
Exactly. So, okay, that's hard. And it's a lot of resources to make that happen. What can they do now? So they've just released, as of, I want to say a month ago, Grit and Glory, which is going to be the drive to survive of enduro mountain biking. And I think this, if executed correctly, can be the future for enduro. And over a long enough time period, it can catch up with downhill in terms of potential funding or backing. Because imagine people like with Drive to Survive going to watch the stories, falling in love with the characters, and watching it on any evening throughout the year compared to only when that event's going on. And it could be, if done right, a bigger mass market product. But I fear that it's going to take a year or two for that to catch up. So enduro is in an interesting place where there's not a whole lot of funding in it in general. You know, different results might not change your career. And will enough riders be able to get to the next season or that next season? And will enough teams be able to, so that they can now see the benefits of that series and see the actual dollars come back to them?
I mean, it's the typical evolution, right? Like, I guess the brands, if they want to continue selling bikes and continue marketing them in the race format, like in enduro, they're going to keep evolving with the networks as well.
Another point is, way back in the EWS days, they were doing these more adventure races where you'd have a 4-day race. It was on some island somewhere or in South America. And I think that's where enduro really flourished and thrived. And I think they're realizing that again. And they're realizing also that for enduro to succeed, they need to make the sport the most exciting sport possible for this docu-series format. And I think, in my opinion, that like exotic location play could be the way to make it happen. Because in addition to the good racing, people are going to be tuning in to see this new place. People are going to be going like, hey, maybe I want to travel here to ride these trails that the race is going to do. And that could be a possible avenue too.
I mean, highlighting the locations is definitely a good way to bring in some non-endemic dollars. I know a lot of those places probably have like tourism boards, and you can get some funding and some permitting and some benefits that way. But going all the way back to EWS stuff, like looking at kind of what you were talking about, how it looked like it was going to be the thing and it was going to start, you know, maybe overtaking downhill, because at that point downhill was like kind of in question. I kind of go back to the organizers, the people pushing the buttons of EWS back in the day, relying on the industry too much to make the sport happen. When you look at it, it was the industry and the brands that were paying the athletes. They were sponsoring the tour. They were paying for the mechanics and all of the infrastructure that comes and creates the festival village for the event. They were paying for entries. That's what's crazy, is like, as a sponsor of the series, when I was working for a brand, we would spend $25,000 or whatever it was to be the tour sponsor. We still had to pay entries for every single rider that got in there. And I still have this picture in my mind when all of that kind of adding up to seeing Richie Rude on top of the podium holding a €335 check.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking to myself, wow, there was also 400 amateurs. They're paying £200, whatever money that is, to enter this race, doing some quick math. And it's like, okay, who's from the organization that stands to benefit from this working? Where is their risk? Where is their investment? And I know it takes money and it takes things to make it happen. And maybe that's the reason why. I certainly don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but just that missing non-endemic support, or that sales of that sponsorship with the organization of EWS pushing to get somebody besides the bike industry to support the sport, whether it was entries, whether it was sponsorship, paying the athletes, all of those things. There needed to be some other thing making it happen, because 2019, the bike industry blew up a little bit and then it went down, and now it's like enduro's in question because there's no support. There's top riders, top 3, top 5 riders with no sponsors. There's people struggling to get from event to event. There's teams folding every day, pretty much. Like, yeah, the bike industry can't support everything. But then you look at other sports and you see how many other brands and other sponsors are supporting the infrastructure and the organization to make the events actually happen. Like, I'm pretty sure that like Manchester United is not registering their athletes when they go out of town and play an out of town team. Like, they don't have to pay for anything, probably.
Right.
They don't have to rent the locker room, or, you know, it's just, it seems like there needs to be some support from the outside in order for it to succeed.
Right. And I think it's a chicken and egg situation, because the sport needs to get to the outside of just enthusiast mountain bikers. And I think that's what this docu-series is going to do.
I like it. It's a good direction.
Yeah. They're the best situated to make that happen now. But I'm just worried there's going to be an area between. that riders are going to drop out, teams are going to drop out, and the next chapter of enduro could be really great and fruitful for everyone, but we just need to make sure we're all in it still.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be better, right? Like that's the whole thing. It always gets better, always gets more profitable, always gets smoother. Like look at, well, maybe not all the time, because BMX, it was way better when I was doing it, I think, but people that go through it always think that probably. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying on that point. I mean, it's like what gets somebody into a sport, they can relate to it, right? And then when they go out and do that sport, they want to like experience some of what they're seeing. And not everybody is the best in the world. And like, I forget, what is it? I can't remember the Netflix golf series, Swing Away, maybe? Full Swing. There you go. Full Swing. There's like, my favorite character is like the guy that doesn't do that good, but he's like at the bar partying, and he's like just a normal, regular guy, not flying in a private jet. And just like, that's the guy who I relate to. So now if I like got to Twilight, I'm like, doing my little shimmy, and I'm like thinking about him, and I'm like, I have that experience in my mind. But in the past, when it was like only highlighting the guys that are winning and the people dominating, not only did that limit the stories they could tell to the point where like, yeah, you had to make them protected because nobody knows anyone else. You got to make sure you're highlighted riders in the event. Well, that eliminates that by having these other characters involved, and it just expands the people that can relate to it. So, man, I'm all for it, and I hope it works.
Yeah, and I hope that it can provide riders that have given their life to this sport a real avenue to make money, real money, because even prize money in the top 10 or even top 5, that's not going to do it. And nowadays, with how little the teams are getting, that's not going to do it either. So there needs to be something else.
Yeah. To answer your question, like you hope the people that are here now are going to benefit from what is going to be, I would say in my history, if 15 or 20% of the people here now are around to benefit from that plan, that's a good ratio.
You think so?
It's the hard truth, but that's a good ratio.
Yeah, I mean, the hard truth too is in sports careers, they're not incredibly long. They have a lifespan. Once you get to 33, 35, whatever, maybe you're going to struggle. Some people have done it really well. Cecile Ravenel into almost 40 years old, or Greg Minnaar.
But was also forced to retire and kind of doesn't really ride anymore because of injury. So There's that line you got to walk, right?
Exactly. So I think everyone that's involved is just hopeful that they can make it to that point.
Yeah, I think that's no matter what stage of what things are in, that's usually the case. But yeah, this is ground level, and it'll be exciting to see how this just changes the participation and the excitement. I think it goes along with, the whole sport. We talked about it before, I think, about the sport becoming a lifestyle sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, having those series and those different characters to relate to and getting behind the scenes, I think that's what's going to do it. If that's how they do the series and they actually like go home with these athletes and people see how they're living and doing things like these other docuseries do, I think that's going to really, really expand people's view of it.
Yeah, and just bring so many opportunities for sponsorship in, because then they're getting the energy drink and the recovery mix and the shoes that they're wearing on day to day. And like, that's just the situation that the sport needs to be in. And I think one misconception is through this 5-year period of potential bumpiness for the sport, the races have been really, really great.
Yeah, the racing's been tight.
Yeah, it's been tight. There's plenty of people there. The organization runs everything really well on the ground. It's just that not every time does all that information get out in a mass market way to people, because sometimes it's not covered on Pink Bike. It doesn't show up in that one video or whatever it is. But the sport itself is there and alive in a big way. It's just making sure there's enough funding to make the riders be able to travel the world, do that. And now, can they make this TV show as good as it needs to be? I think they can. It's Warner Brothers Discovery. It's going to be on HBO Max. Nowadays, with the syndications of subscriptions, most people will have this sort of subscription. They'll be able to watch it. And if it's done well, it's going to be great.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the make or break is if they have whatever the production company that's doing it is from a bicycle background, mm-hmm. or a bike competitive background. It doesn't have to be necessarily enduro, but somebody who understands bikes and competition and the history and where things have come and where the sport is trying to go. Because that's like a collective way of thinking that comes off in production. And that's really what like kind of makes or breaks a lot of those types of shows.
Exactly. And from my understanding, it is bike people. It's people that have been involved with that scene for a while. And more importantly, are they storytelling people? Are they good producers? Like you've seen the Tour de France show, excellent show. The Drive to Survive show, excellent show. And they're more or less, I think, produced by similar people. And they have that one sort of hook and story that they always tell. And if they could copy paste that, it's going to be super successful.
Dude, I'm sure it's a formula. I'm sure they have it like in the editing room on a bar graph generated by AI. Like this percentage of family content will get you this many likes and clicks and views and shares. You're shaking your head. Am I right? Yeah, so it's all calculated. So let's hope that formula that they do have works on mountain bikes as well, because it can only be good for us.
Exactly.
Dude, you know what? One of the things I've been noticing at the World Cups this year is how tight the junior racing is and how competitive it is. Like in the past, it was always kind of like a side note.
Right.
Also, they didn't broadcast it, but being at the races, it was always a side note. But now it's like, it's part of the show.
Yeah, and we've seen something pretty interesting happen.
Yeah.
The first Gearbox World Cup win. Okay, it's not elite, but Ollie Clark winning.
100
Not.
high fives.
Yeah. Someone actually came up to me and they're like, dude, he won it on a Gearbox. And I was like, I don't think he's going to get the money. It's got to be an elite World Cup downhill win, and that's the 100K.
Yeah, Gates has the 100 grand bounty on the first one to win a World Cup on a gearbox bike with a belt. It doesn't have to be a gearbox, just a belt-driven bike. But yeah, the fine print, no juniors. Is it men and women though?
It is men and women.
You can't do that these days.
Yeah.
You can't say only the boys.
Of course. And we've seen it happen now in Enduro too. The first race in Pietro Ligure this year was won by Hattie Hardenden on a gearbox bike in Nikolai. And okay, it's starting to happen. But will we see it this year in elite?
Who's on the list?
Many people actually. Atherton, Zeroed, Gamex. We have Reese Wilson, who has a lot of potential there. There's also, again, Hattie racing downhill on a gearbox bike. That could be a thing that can happen too.
Yeah, that totally could happen, especially as the season goes on, and the possibility of more mud races. I know Hattie's dialed in the mud, growing up in Scotland. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the belt didn't start off so good. At the beginning of the year, we saw like people finishing runs with the belt around their shoulder and things that you didn't want to happen. But yeah, I think, more teams are definitely adapting their bikes too. We saw a lot of belt-driven bikes kind of show up, people chasing that bounty. But yeah, Ollie Clark out of New Zealand on the MS0 team, he, is showing that it's possible by doing it in the junior category. Super competitive run, would have been top 20 in the elites.
Yeah, only 3 seconds off the win, the elite win.
Yeah. So, I watched his run. It was super exciting. It was interesting though, even though he had gotten third in Poland, it just kind of went over my head for whatever reason. And when I was watching the coverage, went through like Asa and, the Elram brothers and the names that I knew in the junior category. And then it was like, last to go, Ollie Clark. I'm like, oh, last to go. I haven't followed this guy. I totally spaced him. But yeah, man, he killed it. Such a solid run, top to bottom, aggressive, a little bit on the ragged edge, but you could see how much it meant to him at the finish line and that whole team. It was so cool to see.
Yeah, juniors will give everything and more.
Yeah. There's tiers, whether you're doing good or bad in juniors.
Yeah.
A lot of emotions out there. It's cool.
Yeah, totally. But we shall see if this season it's going to happen in elite. I wonder, will the 100K carry over to the next season if it doesn't? I got
to feel like that's a huge marketing activation for Gates. And if they don't have to pay it out, why would you not keep it going, right? It only becomes, that marketing angle only becomes more valuable the second year.
Honestly, I think it's probably the best spent 100K ever. I'm sure they've spent more on it. I've seen homepage takeovers and ads running, but a lot of people are talking about it. Everyone now knows Gates. And did they know Gates before?
I'd never heard of him.
Probably not. It was expensive, but I think in terms of efficiency for their money, they're getting a really good deal.
Yeah, they're in my brain. That's for sure. It's funny. My fan belt was kind of squealing in my van the other day, and I was like, I wonder if Gates makes fan belts.
Honestly, I think, I don't actually know, but my hunch is that there's a connection. Most of those belts and cars and stuff, it's probably a similar manufacturer that's the parent company or something.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many people buying or speccing Gates belts on bikes. The money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. It's actually some of those sweepstakes and bounties and things like that are actually insurance policies.
Really?
Yeah. So the fixed cost is the marketing behind it and the insurance policy.
The premium.
and whether somebody wins or not. And a lot of these big insurance companies like Goldman Sachs or, whatever, they'll bond and insure anything. They do their research, they figure out what their liability is, and they give you a cost on what, like, that's like win $1 million under the top of your Pepsi bottle. Like, Pepsi's not paying you $1 million. They just run the numbers and they pay whatever the fixed cost is from the insurance company. And actually, this is a little off topic, but one of the sickest things ever done, in my opinion, in professional sports was back in the day, the Suzuki RM450 was like the 450, and Chad Reed wanted to race it. And Suzuki was folding as a team at the time. They're like, we have no money to pay you. And he's like, just give me the opportunity. I'll ride for free. But he had a championship bonus, and that was it.
Really?
Just a championship bonus. And he was riding for free. And he went out and he won the championship. But the thing was, is there was no money in, like, they didn't even have the funds. The team didn't have the funds to buy the insurance policy on his $10 million bonus or whatever it was. I don't know the number. So he bought his own, instead of getting his salary, he told them, he's like, use my salary to buy the insurance policy on the championship because I'm going to win it. Mm-hmm. And he went out and won.
That's so insane.
It's so sick. One of the sickest stories ever that I feel like everybody should know, but it's not very talked about. It's funny.
Yeah, and I wonder how many of the teams are using that exact thing to create these incentive structures for riders.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some riders, they'll structure, like, I think, who was it? It was some moto thing I was watching the other day. So John Tomac does all of Eli's contract negotiations, and it was like, $5,000 for fifth place, $25,000 for a win, this and that. And I guess John Tomac was like, we don't want any of this. We want 250 for the championship. Like back when he was riding, 250s and he was just a new kid. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of ways you can motivate yourself, right? Like I'm here to win this championship. So, as an athlete, your goal is, I can't wait. I got to win a race or want to win this contest. And when you get there, sometimes you find yourself in this no man's land. Like, I've reached this target that I've had. Now what? But if the target and the success doesn't happen until you win that championship, it keeps that athlete hungry. So different ways, that people can structure their bonuses. But it's interesting how it's insurance policies, really. Yeah,
and in the sport of mountain biking, I think most of the bonuses do come from the sponsors themselves and never from prize winnings. Whereas I think in like supercross, motocross, golf, anything else, there's a lot of money in the pot for the series that's getting paid out. So like enduro, 10th place, it pays down to 10, which is cool, but I think it's like €75.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then the win's 1,500 or something like that. So there's never that much to be had. But the top enduro rider, whoever, whoever could be a multiple $1,000 bonus from multiple sponsors,
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different. And that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about, the race organization relying on the industry to make the sport happen. Like There needs to be some, and athlete pay is one of them, because if you can win $100,000 to win a race, you as a brand need to financially motivate your athlete, maybe not quite as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another great episode. Thank you so much for being here, Allan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm happy to be back, and we're going to do many more. So let's keep it up.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Welcome back. You got a couple weeks off of the World Cup, so let's get some riding in, do some more podcasts. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Getting a new bike today.
Oh, dang. New bike day for you?
New bike day.
Let's go ride.
Let's go ride. Can we speak now? A little bit of jet lag remains.
How now, brown cow?
Purple Piper picked a pickle. WBD Enduro.
Is that Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
I think it's great now because I get it for free. It's on HBO, man.
But, okay.
Lights. Okay, where are we at? New bike day for you?
New bike day.
Let's go ride.
Let's go ride.
What'd you get?
Transition relay.
Regulator.
Jordan!
What up, Jordan?
Yo!
Sick episode, guys.
Hello.